They thought you'd come crawling back. They thought the silence would break you first. They thought all it would take was a few posts, a thirst trap, a hint of them being fine without you, and you'd come knocking. But the longer you stay gone, the more your absence begins to say what your words never could. You're not mad. You're not broken. You're done. And here's the terrifying part for them. The longer you're single, the more your avoidant ex will start to feel it. Not right away. Not while the distractions are still working, but slowly, quietly, then all at once. Because you weren't just another warm body. You were a mirror, a challenge, a safe place. A damn fortress of loyalty in a world full of weak connections. And now, that fortress is gone. That version of you, the one they took for granted, is no longer available for re-entry. When the soul suffers too much, it develops a taste for it. Albert Camus. Your silence isn't passive, it's tactical. It's pressure they can't handle. Because avoidants don't fear losing you until they realize you're no longer available to come back. Most people won't admit this. They'll say don't wait for them, and they're right. But that's not the full story, because this isn't about waiting. It's about watching what happens when you stop chasing. See, when you break from a connection with someone who has an avoidant attachment style, they often convince themselves they're relieved, that it's better this way. They post about peace. They say they're focusing on themselves. They act cold, distant, unshaken. But you're not supposed to believe that, because what they're actually doing is avoiding the emotional bill. Stat check. According to the Journal of Personality and Social Psychology, people with avoidant tendencies struggle with post-breakup reflection. They bypass discomfort by immediately distracting themselves with surface-level connections, workaholism, or mindless dopamine hits. In simple terms, they run, they suppress, they delay the grief. But grief doesn't vanish. It waits. And the longer you're silent, single, grounded in your power, the more that delayed grief catches up with them. It creeps in on lonely Sundays. It stings during quiet nights when there's no one to validate them. It shows up exactly when they thought they had moved on. They expected you to panic, to reach, to beg, but instead, you focused. You healed. You stayed single on purpose. And here's what they don't get. Choosing to stay single is one of the most confronting things you can do. Why? Because it forces you to sit with the exact thing they're running from, yourself. It is not death that a man should fear, but he should fear never beginning to live. Marcus Aurelius. You stopped chasing validation. You started chasing truth. You started asking, who am I when I'm not performing for affection? What do I need now that I'm not trying to impress anyone? Who do I become when I stop bleeding for people who never even brought a bandage? And in that solitude, you became dangerous. Not because you're angry, not because you're cold, but because you're whole. Avoidants don't know what to do with someone who's whole. They need a fixer, a chaser, a rescuer. But once you stop rescuing them from themselves, they're left with a terrifying reality. You're the only one who truly saw them, and now you're gone. Let's be clear, this isn't about revenge. It's about alignment. You didn't win the breakup. You transcended it. While they numb, you evolve. While they avoid, you confront. While they date out of loneliness, you choose stillness out of strategy. And here's the promise I'll make to you. If you watch this video to the end, you'll understand exactly what's happening beneath the surface in their mind. You'll see how their detachment isn't strength, it's fear in costume. You'll learn how your silence has become the loudest voice in their life, and why your absence is now rewriting the narrative they told themselves to feel okay. Because there will come a moment, and it will come, when the dopamine fades, when the attention dries up, when the rebound gets boring, and in that stillness, they'll think of you. Not the needy version, not the one they ghosted, but the version they didn't stay long enough to understand. So before we go any further, do this. Hit like to boost this message into more timelines that need to hear it. Subscribe if you're choosing wholeness over codependence. Share this with someone who keeps folding for breadcrumbs. Join our channel membership to support powerful content like this. And in the comments, I want you to write this mantra. My silence is strategy, not to sound cool, not to get likes, but to declare, you're not coming back to fix what they broke. You're not available to be a band-aid for someone who's still cutting themselves emotionally. You're single, on purpose, with purpose. And that is your superpower. Let's go deeper. Stay focused. Key point 1. Avoidance only feels safe when they're in control. Your silence destroys that avoidant exes are addicted to one thing above all. Control. Not love, not closeness, not healing. Control. They control how close they let you get. They control when they pull away. They control when the conversations happen, when the feelings are allowed, when the relationship breathes, and when it suffocates. They master the art of hot and cold, because as long as they are the ones controlling the emotional thermostat, they don't have to face the burning fear of vulnerability. We are more often frightened than hurt, and we suffer more from imagination than from reality. Seneca C. The avoidant doesn't leave because they don't feel something for you. They leave because they do, and that terrifies them. So, what happens when you finally do the one thing they never expected you to do? Nothing. No text, no drama, no reaction. You go ghost. But not out of immaturity or revenge, out of alignment. You stop playing the game. You stop trying to win them back. You choose self-respect over re-engagement. And now, they're no longer in control. This is where the cracks start to form in their emotional fortress. Because avoidants are used to you reacting. They're used to you reaching back. Even if they push you away, they do so expecting you to linger, to chase, to prove. But now you're not reacting. You're unavailable. You didn't play the final text game. You didn't beg. You didn't wait around. You did the unthinkable. You became silent. And in your silence, you became powerful. That silence, it's not just the absence of words, it's the presence of a boundary, a refusal, a line drawn in permanent ink. And for someone who built their identity around emotional distance, that's earth-shattering. Because it means they're no longer the one in control of the emotional tension. You are. They may not show it right away. They'll act unfazed, detached, stoic. They might even look happier, like they've finally found peace. But let's make something clear. Avoidants don't process loss in real time. They suppress, not address. And by the time they realize what they lost, you're already gone. They expected the breakup to feel like a break. But now they're realizing it was the beginning of your rebirth. You want the truth? They're not winning. They're not free. They're just stalling their own emotional breakdown while watching you evolve into someone they can no longer reach. And no, they won't admit it. Their ego won't allow that. Not yet. But they're feeling it. The moment you stop trying to control their feelings, you took back control of your own. That's the shift. That's the power move. And that's why your silence will always be louder than their chaos. Key point 2. They confuse freedom with healing until the silence feels like rejection. Let's get something straight. Avoidants don't walk away to heal. They walk away to escape. To them, distance feels like peace. Avoidance feels like strength. Space feels like clarity. But that's a lie they tell themselves. A temporary high that only works when the person they left is still emotionally orbiting around them. Freedom is what you do with what's been done to you. Jean-Paul Sartre. So when they first leave, they feel free, liberated, light. They do all the surface things. Hit the gym, post selfies, flirt with people they don't care about. And they love thinking you're watching. They love imagining you're stuck, that you're still hoping they come back. Because to someone who fears real emotional intimacy, that's the only kind of control they know, keeping you emotionally addicted from a distance. But then something happens. You go dark. No likes, no views, no passive-aggressive stories. Just silence, stillness, detachment. And that is when their false sense of freedom starts to collapse, because they weren't expecting to feel rejected. That's the irony. Avoidants fear intimacy, but they fear true rejection even more. They want to be the one who leaves, the one who pulls away first, the one who gets to say, "I need space," and still be adored from afar. But when you remove yourself completely, when you stop playing the emotional yo-yo, when you stop hoping for them, now their freedom doesn't feel like peace. It feels like a punishment. Because suddenly their silence isn't power, it's being ignored. And someone who's used to being chased can't handle that. At first, they'll double down. They might even post more, party more, date louder. But it's not healing. It's hiding. They're not moving on. They're running from the realization that you were the only one who offered connection without control. You loved them without trying to possess them. You showed up without needing them to change. And now that love is gone, no breadcrumb trail, no backdoor access, just a blank space where your energy used to be. And that void, it starts to haunt them. Avoidants don't regret immediately, but they do eventually, because every surface-level distraction has an expiration date. The party ends. The texts stop. The spark fades. And what's left? A mirror. And they hate what they see in it. Because deep down they know they weren't pushed away. They ran. And the one person who never tried to fix them, who loved them as they were, is no longer available. You didn't chase. You didn't collapse. You didn't beg for closure. You created your own. And the longer you stay silent, the louder the truth becomes. They didn't lose you because you weren't enough. They lost you because they didn't know how to receive enough. And now, your silence isn't rejection. It's a revelation. It reveals who they are, what they avoid, and just how deeply they fear being truly seen. Key point 3. The fantasy starts to crumble, because no one new feels as safe as you did. Let's expose another myth right now. They didn't leave because they found someone better. They left because they believed they'd feel better without you. Read that again. It's not about replacing you. It's about escaping themselves. Avoidants often idealize life after you. They tell themselves, if I could just be single again, I'd feel lighter. If I could just find someone new, less intense, less emotional, less demanding, I'd feel happy. That's not clarity. That's emotional fantasy. People don't want the truth. They want reassurance. Jordan Peterson. Avoidants aren't looking for a deeper connection. They're looking for someone who won't challenge them to grow. Someone who won't threaten their walls. Someone who will let them keep hiding. So what do? They chase light connections, safe flings, low-stakes people. Because those people don't require vulnerability. But here's the truth they always run from. They will never feel seen with someone who never challenges them. They might feel in control, but they won't feel connection, and eventually that becomes suffocating. At first, it feels good. No pressure, no depth, no accountability. But shallow connections dry up fast. You can only pretend for so long. You can only fake happiness for so many weekends before the void returns. And when it does, they start remembering you. Not the fights, not the arguments, not the moments where they shut down and blamed you for being too much. They remember the stillness of being emotionally safe, because no matter how hard you loved, you never tried to trap them. You saw them, and you stayed until they made it impossible. Now they're out there, free, single, thriving, except they're not. Because the people they're meeting now, they don't see them the way you did. They don't notice the little signs of shutdown. They don't ask the hard questions. They don't sit quietly and make space for the parts they're afraid to show. They just exist. And for the avoidant, that feels safe, for a moment, until it feels empty. Let's be real, most of them won't admit this out loud. Ego won't let them. But they'll start checking your profile again. They'll randomly view your story. They'll text something subtle, hope you're doing well, or saw something that reminded me of you. They're not reaching out because they miss you. They're reaching out because they miss the safety they felt with you. And safety? That can't be replicated with strangers who don't know their patterns. This is the beginning of the unraveling. The point where the fantasy they created starts to dissolve under the weight of your absence. Because you weren't just another person. You were the sanctuary. The one place where they didn't have to perform, where they were understood, sometimes even better than they understood themselves. And now, that sanctuary is gone. And they know deep down, they won't find that again, not in the clubs, not on dating apps, not in temporary flings. Because the thing they're looking for doesn't exist outside them. It was created in the space between you. And they broke it. Key point 4. They don't miss you all at once. They miss you in waves, and each one hits harder than the last. Here's the part no one talks about. Avoidants don't miss you like a tidal wave. They miss you like slow, creeping erosion. At first, they feel relief. Then silence. Then stillness. Then something starts tugging at them. It's not longing, not yet. It's a question, a flicker of doubt. What if I made a mistake? But they push it down, swipe it away, mute the thought. Because missing you all at once would require admitting they feel anything deeply. And avoidants are masters of emotional delay. But grief doesn't vanish when you ignore it. It waits in the shadows, and it collects interest. What you resist not only persists, but will grow in size. Carl Jung. So instead of one big breakdown, they experience you in waves. When a song you both loved plays randomly. When someone new doesn't laugh at the same jokes. When they realize they have to explain themselves all over again to someone who doesn't get them. when no one checks in when they go quiet. Because you always did. Each wave is small at first. A whisper, a reminder, a pang of something real. Then it builds. Because the one thing they can't stop feeling in your absence. Safe. They didn't feel judged by you. They didn't have to be on around you. They didn't have to earn your love. It was just there. And now, that feeling isn't showing up anywhere else. Here's the cruel part. They thought the pain would hit you like this. They thought you'd be the one slowly drowning in regret. They thought you'd be the one watching from afar, wishing it had ended differently. But you're not. Because you made a decision most people never do. You chose peace over closure, stillness over chaos, healing over proving a point. You walked away from the version of you that needed to be chosen. And now that version is dead. And what's left is someone they can't manipulate anymore. So, as the waves keep coming, stronger, harder, and more unignorable, you know what happens. They begin to spiral. Not loudly, not dramatically, privately. Because now they know you're not texting, you're not watching, you're not hoping, you're healing. And that hits harder than anything else, because people with avoidant attachment expect everyone to chase them. But they never expected you to outgrow them. Secret mantra. In the comments, type, I didn't lose them, I found myself. Say it not for them, say it for you, because every wave that hits them now is a wave you already survived. You didn't run from the grief. You walked through it, stone-faced, unflinching, unapologetic. And now, you are free. They are the ones haunted by the echo, and that echo grows louder. Every day you stay gone. Key point 5. Your growth becomes a threat, because it proves they were the problem all along. Let's cut the fluff. Most avoidants don't believe they're the problem when they leave. They tell themselves a different story. We just weren't compatible. I wasn't ready. They were too intense. I needed space to figure things out. Translation. They needed a narrative that made them feel like the mature one, the reasonable one, the one who had to make the hard choice. But then something happens that shatters that entire illusion. You level up. Not the fake glow-up, not the post-breakup flex where you're just posting gym selfies and pretending to be happy. No, real transformation. You're quieter now, but more powerful. You don't chase, you attract. You don't prove, you embody. And now, they can't blame you anymore. Because your evolution is the ultimate truth bomb. You were never the unstable one. You were never the needy one. You were never the cause of the dysfunction. You were just the mirror, and they smashed it because they didn't like what they saw. You can easily judge the character of a man by how he treats those who can do nothing for him. Malcolm S. Forbes. When you were loyal, consistent, vulnerable, they pushed you away. But now that you've stopped needing anything from them and your value speaks louder than ever, it burns, because your growth is proof, not just of who you are, but of who they failed to become. Here's the part they'll never say out loud. They didn't expect you to grow without them. They expected you to collapse, to regress, to stay stuck while they got better. But now you're getting invited to better rooms. You're emotionally grounded. You're more attractive because you're more whole. You're not a lesson anymore. You're a missed opportunity. And let's not sugarcoat it. Your growth doesn't inspire them. It exposes them. Because every step you take toward your higher self makes their excuses look smaller. They were too emotional. Actually, you were emotionally available. They wanted too much. No, you had standards. I wasn't ready. You didn't want to do the work. Now that narrative doesn't hold. Because if you were really the problem, why are you thriving? Why is peace following you now? Why do other people see your worth so quickly? Because they were the chaos. And here's what really drives it home. They know they'll never get this version of you again. Not because you're holding a grudge, but because they're no longer qualified to sit at your table. You did the work. They did the avoidance. You faced your demons. They doubled down on distractions. You became someone new. And that version doesn't accept old stories, old patterns, or half-hearted love. You're no longer available for what broke you. And that is the moment they realize you were never asking for too much. You were just asking the wrong person. Key point 6. Your detachment becomes their obsession because they can't read you anymore. Let's break one of the most toxic myths wide open. Avoidants don't hate emotion. They hate losing control over it. As long as you were emotional toward them, texting, arguing, confessing, chasing, they could keep you in a box. They knew where you stood. They knew you cared. Even when things were messy, they understood your position. But once you went quiet, once you started pulling your energy back, once you stopped reacting, stopped checking, stopped explaining, panic. Not obvious panic, not public meltdown. We're talking internal, spiraling, obsessive, can't sleep at night panic. Nothing is more terrifying than the unknown, especially when the unknown used to adore you. Anonymous. They no longer have access to your thoughts. They can't decode your silence. And worst of all, you don't need closure. And that's what really breaks them. Avoidants thrive in dynamics where you're the one who's unsure, where you're the one who's stuck in limbo. Because as long as you're confused, they don't have to be clear. But when you become quiet, clear, unreachable, now they're the ones wondering, did I misjudge their feelings? Are they over me? Are they dating someone else? Did I lose them permanently? The same person who said they need space is now checking to see if you're online. The same one who ghosted is now looking for signs that you still care. But here's the part that messes with their head the most. Your silence doesn't feel like punishment. It feels like peace. And that's the deadliest weapon of all. Because if you were still mad, still emotional, still bitter, they'd know there's a line back in. But now, you're not bitter, you're not sad, you're just gone. And that kind of peace, that's what keeps them up at night. They start obsessing, not because they love you all of a sudden, but because you are no longer predictable. They can't trigger you, they can't bait you, they can't read you. And avoidants need to feel one step ahead emotionally. Once they lose that, they spiral. You become a mystery, an open loop in their mind that they can't close. And you know what human beings do with emotional loops they can't close. They obsess, they replay, they reimagine, they reconstruct new versions of the breakup in their mind where you were the unstable one, because facing the truth would destroy the false self they created to feel in control. But your silence isn't just empty, it's strategic. Every day you remain unbothered, unreactive, unavailable. They remember how calm you were when they were chaotic. They remember how loyal you were when they pulled away. They remember how they left someone who would have gone to war for them, just because they were too afraid to fight their own demons. Now, they're obsessed with a version of you they'll never have access to again. And that obsession, that's not love. It's grief mixed with guilt. And it hits different when the door actually stays closed. Key point 7. Your absence forces them to face the one person they've always avoided. Themselves. Avoidant people don't avoid you. They avoid the version of themselves that relationships expose. Because when you show up with love, patience and consistency, you force them to confront the parts of themselves that can't hold it. The emotional immaturity, the unhealed trauma, the fragile ego, the part that says, I don't deserve this. And here's the thing. As long as they were in the relationship, they could blame you. They're too intense. They want too much. They're too emotional. They're overwhelming me. But now you're gone, and none of that blame sticks anymore. Man is not what he thinks he is what he hides. Andre Malraux. When you disappear, you take the emotional spotlight with you. Now there's no one to perform for, no one to accuse, no one to reflect their wounds back to them, just silence, stillness, and a mirror they can't avoid anymore. See, you were the last distraction, the last person they could hold responsible for their inability to open up. But now, it's just them, alone in their apartment, alone with their thoughts, alone with the realization that this freedom they fought so hard for feels empty. Why? Because freedom without intimacy is just isolation. They thought the problem was the relationship. But now that it's over, and they still feel broken, unsettled, confused, they have to ask the question they never wanted to face. What if I was the one who sabotaged something real? Here's the truth. Your absence is like sobriety. It's clear, brutal, unforgiving. And clarity, that's something they've spent their entire life avoiding. Avoidants aren't just scared of closeness. They're terrified of who they become when love requires them to be seen. Because love isn't a performance. Love requires truth. And their entire defense mechanism is built on avoiding that truth. But now, the distraction is gone. The mirror is still. And for the first time, they see it clearly. They pushed away the one person who saw them and didn't run. They ran from someone who would have accepted the parts they were ashamed of. They built walls and lost the one person who knew how to climb them with grace. And that realization, it's a slow burn, one they'll try to numb again. But it never really goes away, because once someone like you is gone, and they realize they were the one who drove you away, they don't just lose you. They lose the version of themselves they could have become with you. If they come back, you won't be there. And that's the real closure. Here's the part they never saw coming. Even if they come back, it won't matter. Because they're not coming back for you. They're coming back for how you made them feel. They're coming back to feel safe again, seen again, validated again. But here's the difference. You're no longer that version of yourself, the version who waited, the version who chased, the version who tried to make it work with someone emotionally unavailable. That version died in the silence. And what rose from that stillness is someone they're not qualified to access anymore. They may text. They may circle back with, "I've been thinking about you," or "I wasn't ready back then." But now you know what that really means. I didn't grow. I just got lonely. Because growth takes work, and they didn't do it. But you? You sat with your pain. You faced your truth. You didn't just go through the breakup. You grew through it. So now, even if they say the right things, even if they mean it, it's too late. Never go back to what broke you just because you're finally strong enough to stand it. They lost someone real, and they lost you in the most painful way imaginable. Not because you stopped loving them, but because you started loving yourself more. And that's the closure, not the text, not the apology, not the story you'll never get to rewrite. The real closure is knowing you evolved while they stayed the same. That you became unavailable not out of pride, but out of growth. If this message hit you deep, here's what to do right now. Like this video to push this truth out to more people. Subscribe so you never miss a message that keeps you grounded. Share this with someone who's stuck in that silent war with an avoidant. Join our channel membership to help us keep making unfiltered, real healing content. And most importantly, type this in the comments and own it fully. I don't chase ghosts, I protect my peace. Say it for every version of you that begged for breadcrumbs. Say it for every time you confused silence with strength. Say it for you, right now. This isn't just a breakup. This is your rebirth. And they'll feel your absence long after you've forgotten their name. Now, walk forward. Powerful, clear, unbothered, unreachable. Wait before you go. If you think your avoidant ex is done thinking about you, wait until they see this one change in you. Not silence, not indifference, not even success. Something deeper, something they didn't expect. Something that makes them question everything. In our next video, we're breaking it down. Your avoidant ex was fine until they saw this one change in you. This isn't about revenge. It's about evolution. And the moment they notice the shift, that's the moment the mask slips. And they can't unsee what they lost. Subscribe now, turn on that bell, because when that next video drops, you'll finally understand why your glow-up isn't physical, it's psychological. We'll see you there.